Well, friends, if we're all ready, why don't we get started? It's lovely to see you all here today, and thanks for making time on a cold winter day in Halifax. Hopefully one of the last. I see that the temperature trend is improving after today, so fingers crossed. My name is Andy Fillmore. I'm the Member of Parliament here in Halifax, and I just want to welcome a few people into the room before we start with the program. So first, a really warm welcome to my friend Marco Mendicino, the MP for Lawrence Eglinton and Canada's Minister of Public Safety to Halifax. Also, our colleagues in the House of Commons are here. Darren Fisher, the MP for Dartmouth-Cole Harbour, and Lena Metledge-Diab, Halifax West. We're also very lucky to be joined by a couple of members of the Legislative Assembly here in Nova Scotia. MLA Ali Douali is here, and MLA Angela Simmons. Really nice to see you as well. And if I've forgotten anybody, just raise your hand and wave, and we'll cover that off. We're gathering today on the traditional and unceded lands of the Mi'kmaq people here on the shores of the Big Harbor, or Chibukjuk. And I also want to recognize the historic and current realities of colonization and the legacy of enslavement that impacts Indigenous peoples and African Nova Scotians' lives here in Halifax. Before we get started, or as we get started, I should say, it's my great pleasure to invite Reverend Skylar Starr to say a few words. Reverend Starr, please.
Okay. Thank you. I am also honored and privileged to be here in Halifax and to support my friends, my new friends, 902 Man Up. We met in August of last year. I did the first training with them, introductory training on gun violence and how to respond to gun violence. And it is my pleasure to stand with them, especially on the last day of Black History Month. Got to give kudos to, where are you? There you are. To Minister Mendicino to announce and to celebrate with us funding for gun violence, which I have been tooting since 2006. Gun violence affects the Black community in massive ways, especially here in Halifax. Toronto's population is 6 million something. Halifax is way lower than that. So the effect of gun violence on this community would be massive, particularly related to the historic cultural background. In the Black community, gun violence affects us, our history, our growth, our family, our connections, and I am very pleased to see that something is actually being done about it here. And before we start, I would like to say a brief prayer to give thanks for God's goodness to us. God of all nations, we thank you that we as human beings can function together as brothers and sisters, no matter the color of our skin, the color of our hair, or who we are. We thank you for the grace and power that you extend to each person individually. And as we gather here, as we celebrate together, we ask a special blessing on those who will be speaking. We pray a special blessing on 902 Man Up on their journey towards addressing gun violence in Halifax. And we especially ask that you would be with us as we celebrate together. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you so much, Reverend Starr, for that and for your work with 902 Man Up and its impact on our community here in Halifax. Thank you. Sincere thanks for that. I'd now like to invite our drummers, Kenny Fells, Jelani Starr, and Rowan Starr, to start us off with a good drum. That's how the pros do it. Thanks so much, Kenny, Jelani, and Rowan for that. That's really beautiful. Great way to get us started today. Well, 902 Man Up is a volunteer-run grassroots organization dedicated to the well-being and the advancement of Black communities across Nova Scotia. It was formed in 2016 by Marcus James and Peter Campbell, who are right up here with us today, in response to an outbreak of violence in Halifax that disproportionately affected African Nova Scotian community members. The founders recognized the wealth of wisdom that existed within their own community and wanted to bring people together to create purposeful action. I think it was your words, Marcus. You said something like, "We can do more." I believe those were your words at that time. 902 Man Up members, some of whom are with us today, were determined to get involved and take an active role in the community and to make a difference. The 902 crew today is rounded out with Roger Smith, Roger Grant, Kenny Fells, and Sean Dixon. And I also want to point out, again, Reverend Starr for her help that she has been offering to 902 Man Up as well. 902's work includes professional development, mentorship, employment skills opportunities, and other local initiatives, including a homeless shelter. Their advocacy on banning street checks in Halifax awarded them a Nova Scotia Human Rights Award in 2019. Now, over the years, I've been personally very grateful to rely on Marcus and Peter, and others, in fact, the whole 902 Man Up crew, for guidance and feedback and friendship in my role as Member of Parliament here in Halifax for the last 8 or so years. This federal riding is home to an incredible African Nova Scotian community, and I've learned so much from my 902 Man Up friends as we've worked together to navigate the real changes and more importantly, the real opportunities that exist right here in our city. I want to just quickly share a quick story. Several years ago, Marcus and his son Trayvon Clayton and other members of the African Nova Scotian community came to Ottawa during African History Month, and there experienced racism on the Hill at the hands of the Parliamentary Security Detail. This was a very difficult situation for all of us to deal with, and I just want to say thanks to Marcus and the 902 Man Up crew for teaching me how I could best represent their voice through what became a process that followed there and came to a really good resolution. So I learn something every time I'm with you, so thank you for that. Well, coming back to today, I mentioned in the origin story of this organization, in 2016, after a spate of violence involving Black men in our community, these men were compelled to make a positive difference and establish 902 Man Up. And while they have made a real positive change, we know that work to curb violence in this city is ongoing. Tragically, we continue to lose young people, and in particular young Black men, to senseless acts of violence in the city of Halifax. And that's a problem that expands beyond our municipality and into other communities across Canada. And that's why the Government of Canada has established the Crime Prevention Action Fund. Now, importantly, this fund is not about repeating the failed tough-on-crime approach that perpetuates the cycle of violence. We've seen that tactic from previous governments and other jurisdictions before. It does not work to address the underlying causes of crime. In fact, every time it makes things worse. And I'm sorry to have to get political for a moment here, but sadly we're seeing this tough-on-crime approach being called for again day after day lately in Canada's House of Commons from the Conservative opposition. It's absolutely reckless. We know it doesn't work. So this fund we're celebrating today is the complete opposite of that. It's about implementing community-based, innovative crime prevention initiatives that cut across sectors to advance shared community goals, including well-being goals. Systemic barriers like racism, intergenerational trauma, social alienation, they all remove opportunity, and they lead vulnerable members of our community into the criminal justice system. And we can stop that before it happens by working in partnership with community-based organizations like 902 Man Up. As a grassroots organization of engaged community members, they have had the unique experience and local credibility to support crime prevention efforts here in Halifax. With a strong track record of working with the community, with law enforcement and government to bridge divides that promote safe communities and environments for all, 902 Man Up is well suited to lead positive change in a respectful and meaningful way, and to ensure that as Halifax continues to grow, everyone, and I mean everyone, is provided the opportunity to contribute to and to benefit from our collective success. So To tell us more, I would like to invite my friend Marco Mendicino, Canada's Minister of Public Safety, to make today's announcement. Marco.
Thanks very much, Andy. Merci, Andy. Thank you. Andy, thank you, friends. Thank you for the Indigenous land acknowledgement. Thank you for acknowledging that today is the last day of Black History Month, and on this auspicious occasion, we have some good news to share. I want to thank you, Andy. I want to thank Darren and Lena and our entire federal caucus for the extraordinary representation that you bring to Parliament, not only as it relates to fighting racism and advancing the path of reconciliation, but on so many other issues which impact communities in Nova Scotia and across the country. It is truly an honor and a privilege to work with you. I also want to take a moment before I get to the substance of the announcement to acknowledge the two MLAs. Ali and Angela, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedules to join us for this announcement. For the benefit of everybody watching, the genesis of this announcement stretches back many years, and you heard it from the Reverend, who said that she'd been advocating since 2006 for more support for initiatives like this one to stop violence before it begins. And Angela, that was exactly the conversation that we had the last time I was here in a roundtable with you and other members and leaders of the community who had a profound influence on me and the way in which they described the loss, the grief, the trauma from families who'd lost their loved ones to gun violence. One thing that you appealed to me was, don't let this just be about words. Let's do something concrete and take action. And I want you to know, and I hope that the community knows, that your words, your work leading up to this announcement has inspired me, our team, our government to be here today. And to Marcus and Peter, before we started this announcement, you talked about starting 902 Man Up in a parking lot, and how at the end of, I'm sure, what was the latest incident and loss of a life, an innocent life, you said enough's enough, and we got to step up. And that's what you've been doing, along with all the other folks that are here in the room with us. And I hope you know how much we appreciate everything that you do for the community, and particularly today, the last day of Black History Month, but every day, the leadership that you show to try and create safe and inclusive spaces for those who are at greatest risk. It's so important what we're about to announce. So thank you, and to the drummers, amazing, inspiring. The drum beat of progress continues. So with all of that, let me just say that communities like we see here in the Halifax Regional Municipality have shown resilience, innovation, and determination in the face of ongoing barriers, inequalities, and systemic anti-Black racism that tragically still exists in our country. And over the last number of years, the pandemic, to a certain extent, has exacerbated and exposed those divides and inequities here in Canada. Inequality, injustice, and unfair privilege are still issues that we have to grapple with today. And today's announcement is about making sure that we make progress on that front. We have to follow the lead that partners like 902 Man Up have offered us, the opportunities, Andy, as you said, that they have put on the table, and continue to work together to build a better and more inclusive future for Nova Scotians and for all Canadians, a future that is free from discrimination, from bias, and yes, racism and hate in all of its forms. I want to emphasize that this African Heritage Month and every Heritage Month, we remain committed to fighting all forms of anti-Black racism and to taking concrete action to protect the rights and well-being of Black Canadians. From our collaboration with the United Nations, to anti-racism strategies, to incorporating inclusivity and anti-discrimination in all that we do to keep our communities safe. Alors même, si c'est la fin du mois de l'histoire des Noirs, nous continuerons de reconnaître et de nous souvenir des contributions et du vécu des Canadiens noirs dans notre histoire. Ainsi, nous pouvons créer un pays plus fort, plus juste et plus inclusif pour tout le monde. And on that note, today, we are here to make the following announcement. The Government of Canada shares the conviction that we need to invest in our people, in our communities, to secure a brighter future for the next generations. That's exactly why, as part of the National Crime Prevention Strategy, the Crime Prevention Action Fund supports local, evidence-based crime prevention initiatives that help community members develop key life skills and to make those positive choices that allows them to give back. And so with that, I am very pleased and excited to announce up to $5.79 million in federal funding for 902 Man Up. Now, as you've all heard, 902 Man Up helps to advance Black communities in Halifax and to empower young people to be free of violence in their lives and to give back. And today's announcement will build on the existing programs, hopefully provide you with some additional capacity so that you can inspire through youth mentorship, leadership training, information sharing, and knowledge and development, develop those skills that will allow each of the members of the community to achieve their full potential. It will help those who participate in the program through direct intervention, employing multiple components. And it will equip all of the folks who are participating with the knowledge and the skills that they need, encouraging leadership and building their confidence, their sense of belonging, their sense of pride in their history and culture. I especially want to thank Marcus and Peter and everyone here, the MLAs, our team in Parliament, for all of the advocacy that has led up to this important occasion. The work that you are doing in our communities shows true leadership. One of the most important yet basic tenets of crime prevention is engaging with our neighbors and supporting each other. Quite simply, it means showing our neighbors that we care, and by doing so, we're forging a path that will lead to positive outcomes and success. And so with that, I just want to say again, a huge thank you, un grand merci, for all of the work that you've done. We're so proud to be able to make this announcement today, and we look forward to the many, many opportunities in the future. Thank you. Merci.
Well, Minister Mendicino, thank you so much for that remarkable announcement. And I was watching faces in the room as you gave that announcement and said that figure, and I can tell you there were a lot of smiles. It woke the drums up too, so that's a good sign. That's a good sign as well. I'd now like to invite Marcus James, the co-founder of 902 Man Up, to share a few thoughts. Marcus.
Thanks, Andy. I'm not much of a speaker, I'll be honest. What I am is a worker. Right, and this opportunity for 902 Man Up is huge, but it takes more than money. It takes a community to intervene and stop something that impacts all of us, right? Especially the African Nova Scotian community. I don't know if people recognize what it's like to see a young man, young Black woman die before you. Peter and I do. And it's extremely difficult. And it's not something that leaves, right? And to see more and more of this happening, we need to put a stop to it, somehow, some way. In 902 Man Up, we are dedicated to in doing that through relationships, right? Expanding those supports, because unfortunately, the truth is, the Black community right across this nation is impacted by it, right? And we need opportunities. And when you look at gun violence and the impact that it has on us as a whole, there's a whole lot of underlying issues. Lack of employment opportunities, education, mental health. And it cannot be addressed unless you look at all of those issues. And gun violence is a public safety issue. And if anyone tells you differently, they're lying to you, right? It is a public issue, a public safety issue, and we need to address it together, right? 902 Man Up here in our space, it begins within our communities. And that's community giving back what was given to them. That's our philosophy. Teach one, each one teach one. Right? That is our philosophy. That's who we are as community. Right? And when we see our young men, black women being impacted by it, traumatized by it, we need to be in a position so that we can address it immediately. And that's where we're trying to position 902 Man Up. We're not the solution. We're not the answer. As I said, it's a collaborative approach, right? It involves all of us, the private sector, the political sector, education. We need to be in our classrooms talking to our young black learners about it, because the way it stands right now, our educators cannot, because they're not familiar with that deep-rooted, what I refer to as black trauma. They're not familiar with it. So it's community, it's organizations such as 902 Man Up that need to be in those classrooms addressing it with young black learners, talking about it, because that's where we're at with it. That's the size of the impact that it has. It's unfortunate that we have to do that, but we do. Right? And that's exactly what we aim to do. Right? Is attack gun violence, talk to the individuals that are out there doing it, but also talk to the victims. Provide supports for the victims, the mothers, the daughters, the girlfriends, the wives, the uncles, the brothers. And we want to support them. But again, we need all of you to help us do that. And right now, I'd like to call upon Peter, who's just going to say a couple of words, right? And he's shy, everybody, so go easy on him.
See, when we first started this this journey to 902 Man Up and getting everybody on board to believe in what we were trying to do, you know, we started off in the community with a lot of barbecues and bring community together and trying to, you know, get people to recognize what we're trying to do in the community. So, you know, when you put food in place, you can get people to come. And, you know, from that, we learned that, you know what, people can only eat so many hamburgers and so many hot dogs. So you have to put some strategies in play to get us to the next level in life. So what we have done is work with youth and try to show them that, you know what, by coming to these barbecues, you get to know other people, you know, and get to realize that there's other things in the community that you can do and participate in by, you know, helping out and lending a hand, no matter if it's helping with seniors, you know, matter of taking food to seniors on a Friday and just, you know, going up and making sure they get everything they need, and then just having that conversation based on, you know, while you're working with them, lived experience, you're talking to them, saying, hey, you know what, man, what can I do to help you? And you get to know, to understand a kid when you're talking to them every day for a couple weeks. So based on that, that's where we end up putting together, you know, doing the housing thing and working with people in, you know, shelters and stuff like that. So we brought a lot of these young youth that we worked with in the communities, and we trained them to show them how to give back and, you know, work with people that are unfortunate, that don't got a place. And so it's been going really great, actually, because we work with like 80 young youth. So, I mean, compared to where we were last years ago, we're a lot further ahead and we're still growing. So that's all I got to say, and I appreciate the fact that, you know, we're here today and we're getting the money. I'm just ready to go to work. I'm just ready to go to work.
Beautiful. That's a great note to end on. Let's get to work. Let's get to work. We're going to call it good there, but I'm going to. I see Councillor Smith. Hey, Councillor Smith, Lindell Smith, everybody. Nice to see you. Yeah, stuck in the lobby. Oh no. Anyway, good to have you here. We're going to open it up to questions for the media now, and I'm going to invite this gentleman, whose name I've just blanked on, to moderate the Q&A. Yeah.
Hi there, folks. My name's Tim Warmington. I'm manager of public affairs at Public Safety Canada. I have a hard out at 1:30. I'll tell you that right now. So we'll be taking one question and one follow-up question from each reporter. Please identify yourself and your outlet. Et comme toujours, nous sommes très à l'aise de répondre à vos questions en français en plus. Merci.
Okay, hello. Ross Lord with Global National Television. Minister Mendicino, I need to ask you about China's alleged attempts to interfere with our democracy. The Prime Minister seemed very frustrated yesterday by the CSIS leaks, but intelligence sources are leaking to the media because they don't see your government taking action. Did the Prime Minister just double down on a dismissive message to our security agencies?
Well, first I would say that we have been saying for years that foreign interference represents a serious threat to our institutions, including our elections, and that is why we have put in place a number of tools that will assist our intelligence community and other agencies that operate within the public safety apparatus to mitigate against those risks. We have also made sure that those mechanisms include ones that drive transparency. I would point out that we have created 2 independent panels that are made up of our top professional, nonpartisan public servants who examine the information that they need and who concluded that the elections in 2019 and 2021 were not compromised. In other words, the outcomes were that those elections were held in a manner that was free and fair. And this is important to stress, that Canadians and Canadians alone determine the outcomes of our elections by voting at the ballot box. Later this week, in fact, I believe tomorrow, the public will have an opportunity to hear from a number of officials who will testify about this so that we can be upfront about the complexities that lie in the landscape. But I want to assure everybody that we have put in place exactly the mechanisms and the tools that we need to mitigate against the threats which are posed by foreign interference as it relates to our elections and our democratic institutions.
What are your officials telling you about TikTok and the dangers it poses?
Well, you heard my colleague, Minister Fortier, on behalf of the government yesterday announce that TikTok will no longer be permitted on any digital devices or platforms that are used by government officials at the federal level. Obviously, that is a response to, again, one of the concerns that we have about protecting our critical infrastructure, our cyber platforms. It is important that as we interact with Canadians, that they know that their information will be protected, that their information is secure, and that we can deliver the essential services that they need in a way that is also safe and secure. So this is yet another demonstration of the government's vigilance when it comes to any potential threats that may be posed by foreign interference or any other risks to our cyber platforms and our critical infrastructure.
Thank you. Next question.
Minister, Craig Paisley with CBC. How appropriate is it to choose Morris Rosenberg to write a report on election interference, given its ties to the Trudeau Foundation and what the Conservatives call his involvement in directing Chinese money to the organization?
Well, again, I want to state very clearly that the panels that we have appointed are made up of non-partisan, professional, independent public servants. This is not a partisan issue. The threat of foreign interference could have an impact on all parties, and therefore we should be united in doing this work together in a non-partisan way. The conclusions that have been arrived at through the site panel in 2019 and 2021 are there for all the public to see in a way that assures those who participate in the election, and indeed all Canadians, that those elections were conducted in a manner that was free and fair. Now, we will continue to be upfront with Canadians by leveraging the value of transparency through the creation of the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, through the creation of the National Security Intelligence Review Agency, through these 2 panels, who again are not made up of political partisans, but rather by nonpartisan public servants who are independent. They do their work in a manner that is free and clear of partisanship, and that's very important, through the testimony that will be offered by our public officials tomorrow and beyond. And we will continue to be eyes wide open about the complexities of foreign interference so that we can protect our elections, our democratic institutions, and indeed all institutions.
Your government hasn't been clear about whether any individual ridings were affected by foreign influence. Why won't you explicitly tell Canadians whether or not that's the case?
We're going to continue to be upfront and transparent with Canadians when it comes to the threats that are posed to our democratic institutions.
What about individual ridings?
We will continue to be upfront through testimony, through reports, through the work of the National Security Committee of Parliamentarians. You heard the Prime Minister just yesterday say that the most recent report has been delivered to the NSI COP, and it is the government's hope that they will continue to study the issue of how we can best protect our democratic institutions. And this is not an issue that just affects Canada. What we are seeing around the world in the geopolitical landscape is, yes, obviously an increase in the threat of foreign interference, and like-minded countries are working together. Just last fall in Germany, where I attended on behalf of our country with the G7, I invited our counterparts to have a conversation about these issues and disinformation here in Canada. It is important that we are eyes wide open about these threats and that we do this work by giving the agencies the tools that they need, but with the corresponding transparency and accountability that is required so that Canadians can be confident in their institutions and will continue to be assured that when they vote, that they and they alone are the ones that determine the outcomes of the elections in which they participate in. That is the commitment of this government, and we will continue to follow through on it.
All right. Anyone else have any questions?
Any questions about 902 Man Up and the amazing work that we are going to continue with today? There's an important
What's
announcement
$5
here
million
today.
going to do?
Indeed, as you heard. Listen, I'm happy to have Marcus and Peter come back up and tell you
We've heard
exactly.
them. What do you want that $5 million to do?
It's a good question. My hope, and I think that the shared vision of the community of leaders that you see up here, is that through the experiences, as informed by the tragic losses and trauma that have been experienced by this community, that we can give greater capacity through programs, through supports, through extracurricular activities that may allow young students to pursue their education, pursue their passions, pursue their careers in a way that is positive, rather than going down the wrong path. And you heard Marcus and you heard Peter describe that. They've looked into the eyes of the families of victims. I've had those conversations not only here with Angela, but with the families of Portapique and Truro and Polytechnique and right across the country. And Andy makes a good point. There are some of our political opponents who think that the way to stop gun crime is just by investing in law enforcement. We do need to invest in law enforcement. We, in the last 2 years, have put $450 million additional resources into the CBSA just before we got here. We went to the Halifax container terminal where we saw that technology deployed. But my response to the Conservative Party is that's not the only thing we need to do. We also need to empower communities. We also need to work with communities right here in Halifax like 902 Man Up who know best how to stop gun crime before it starts. That's my vision. That's the vision, I think, of this government, is through the strength of relationships and partnerships, empowering them to create safe and inclusive spaces so that we can stop crime before it starts. And that's why this important announcement was made today.
I would like to ask one of the Man Up,
One last question.
thank you, one of the Man Up leaders. In practical terms, how you envision that $5 million filtering down? Is it a matter of hiring staff, making more of a full-time office with full-time staff? Is it a matter of acquiring things you need to continue and reinforce the messaging? What sort of things might that allow you to do?
It is going to allow us to address a lot of the underlying issues when it comes to gun violence. But I'm going to be frank. With or without money, we're going to get the job done. That's who we are. It's community, right? And we have committed ourselves to this, right? It's not a 5-year commitment. It's a lifetime commitment, right? And we're going to look at ways to address it this time next year as well. So you may be back here asking questions again, right? But our approach is different, right? Because it comes from the heart of the community. So it's through talking with community that we're going to address it. We allow all of our communities are different, right? So it's through conversations with them that we will recognize the gaps and look at supporting community, look at supporting existing programs that are already taking place, as I indicated. We're not the solution, but we are a part of it. And this money today is going to help us to expand that throughout the province, throughout the nation, right? When you talk about Black Canada, well, here's where it begins. Right here in Nova Scotia, right? Indigenous blacks, for 400 years, we have been here. And it's time for our voices to be heard. It's time for people to understand what our trauma is and what it is that we go through, right? So we're going to bring that attention. We're going to bring that awareness through educational programs, through community supports, working with public health, because it is a health issue, right? And when we look at the underlying issues, there's so much that we have to address, right? And we have begun those conversations. As Peter indicated, we've already created job opportunities through partnerships, such as Clark over here, who totally believes in 902 Man Up, and he wants to be able to give back. This is his way, right? Through creating more opportunities for education. We're currently working on in conversations with NSCC for young men and women, right? Also looking at those who are transitioning out of the prison system, right? Because although it's prevention, we also need to communicate and address the individuals that are pulling the trigger, because we need to change their mindset. Prison doesn't do that. It does not do that, right? So we want to address all of those key issues that you mentioned.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes the Q&A portion of our event. If you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to contact Media Relations at Public Safety Canada, media@ps-sp.gc.ca. Thank you.
Thank you.